PowerPlayChess, brought to you in association with Kagi. My new book, King's Anti-Sicilians for Black, appears this month. In fact, I'm hoping that by the time this video is published, it'll already be available to buy. I'm recording this a little bit in advance. So I've based the book on my Anti-Sicilians Chessable course that was first published in February 2023. But in the book, there are more detailed explanations. And in the light of comments and questions on the Chessable forum, I've revised some lines, changed some recommendations, and added a few new chapters and variations. Fundamentally, however, this is the same as the online course, but in the book, everything's kind of been tightened up a bit, basically. But in the end, it really depends on which medium you prefer, whether you prefer to look at stuff online or whether you prefer to consume your chess theory with a book. So the book features all those lines where after e4, c5, white declines to go into an open Sicilian with knight f3 and d4. Just to emphasize, this is a repertoire for black, and it complements my Kalashnikov book so that I cover lines with knight f3 and knight c6. So, for example, the Rossolimo is given a lot of attention in the book, and many of you will know my recommendation is knight f6. And there are lines such as the Alapin. There's also the good old Mora Gambit, for example. And, of course, the Grand Prix attack with f4. And I was recently sent a game by Adrian Okeagu, who plays his chess in Germany. And he followed one of my recommendations on the course. And everything worked out beautifully for him. So I'm very happy to look at this game. This was only a Blitz game. So, you know, some of the play is a little bit rough. Let's put it like that. Nevertheless, I think it shows very, very well the kind of pressure that white comes under in the Grand Prix attack when black gets an early counterattack going. I say this with no modesty whatsoever. I've always really enjoyed playing against the Grand Prix attack, and that's happened quite a lot. If you play in England, you're bound to face the Grand Prix attack. And my results have always been pretty decent. But looking at the theory again for the book, it really sort of tightened up my theory and actually gave me some new attacking or counter-attacking ideas with black. So the old move here was bishop c4, but that can be well met by e6 and knight e7. This bishop just gets blocked out. So bishop b5 was the sort of clever way that was found to play the Grand Prix, with the idea to take here, and that gives white much more security for a kingside attack. But of course, black plays knight d4. That is such an important move, not just in this opening, but in most of the anti-Sicilian lines. This knight on d4 is an absolute pain for white to deal with. And of course, this is really very possible when white doesn't get in d4 with an open Sicilian, because white simply doesn't have pressure here. So this is a really nice move. The knight is beautifully placed on d4, but if it's exchanged off, like that, then black is going to normally recapture with the pawn, and then white has to waste time moving the knight, and then there's potential play on the c-file, potential play on this diagonal. So it's a little bit like the Trojan horse in the Kalashnikov. It kind of yeah, it sets off all kinds of complications for your opponent. So this is how the game went. Castles. Now you can grab that bishop, but actually I think we can have fun pushing that bishop around. And the main move here is actually bishop d3, but as I discovered when I was looking through these lines, I think knight h6 is a really interesting move. Just to develop really quickly, and very often you find that that knight is able to counterattack from g4 or f5. I should say f5 once that pawn on e4 is knocked out of the way with a d5 move. Anyway, that's all in the book. But bishop c4 played, which I did mention actually. It seems like a curious move because, again, black is able to push that bishop around. White can get away with it because the rook is attacked. But still, black is going to play e6, shut the bishop out, and then it's really nice for black to already initiate play on the queen side. a4, well, that gives the bishop a square back here. And e6, the bishop is pushed away, of course, so that's really shut out of the game after this. It's possible just to play b4 here, but knight e7, well, there's certainly nothing wrong with developing a kingside piece. And knight takes d4. And here black has a pleasant choice. You can recapture with the bishop, but, well, I really like pawn takes because it gains time. And as I mentioned, this is so often a problem for white. Knight e2. And here Adrian conceives a really nice idea, which is very common in this whole variation. He plays d3, so giving away a pawn, and after this you can see, well, how exactly is that bishop on c1 going to enter the game? And as he said, d3, der Zug, auf den ich besonders stolz bin. Ziel ist es, die Entwicklung des Damenflügels, also insbesondere des Läufer c1, zu erschweren. Well said, Adrian. So it's all about making sure that bishop just doesn't get into the game for ages. You can see there's an absolute traffic jam here. And of course it's very difficult to move that b pawn with the bishop on g7. And b takes a4. I mean, there are lots of nice ways to play this, but this looks very logical to me to get some pressure on this pawn. Not that we really want to take it, but it brings the rook into play. So, yeah, I mean, for example, it was also possible just to play bishop b7 here. I mean, I like black's position a lot, but yeah, why not take on a4? And white played king h1, which I think is a very understandable move, because so often the king lands in trouble on this diagonal. But king h1 is just a straight blunder, and in fact a3 is an absolute killer. It just wins material. Instead, Adrian was so fixated on his very nice plan of, quick development, bringing his pieces into play, that he continued playing in this, well, quite strategic way with queen b6. It's a good move as well, but it doesn't win on the spot. Knight c3 and castle's kingside. Knight a4, well, who cares about that pawn? It's possible to, now perhaps bring this bishop into play on this diagonal. That's an idea. But look at that queen. It's beautifully centralized. And yeah, look at this horrible traffic jam of pawns, making sure that bishop on c1 doesn't enter the game. Bishop c4, well, this is a mistake. It's a blitz game, what can you say? White was obviously worried about that pawn disappearing, but that's the least of his problems, really. d5, and that just cracks open the position. If the bishop goes back, then of course black will take here, and once that bishop hits the long diagonal, there are going to be problems on g2. So often in the Grand Prix attack, white's king ends up suffering because after f4, it means these diagonals are open. And black counterattacks beautifully. So after d5, e takes d5. E takes d5. The bishop had to go back. And bishop f5. Well, why not? Just develop this bishop. And this is just wow, what a position. And rook e8. Well, dare I say it, split rooks. Look at white's rooks. They're never going to be able to connect. Black's rooks connected. So all black needs to do is play knight f5. And once these rooks are exchanged, then basically black will be playing a rook up on the king side. And indeed, the game ended swiftly. Look, that rook is about to slam down on the first rank, and there is absolutely no defense for white. So the game ended like this. Queen g1 mate. So black's strategy worked perfectly. It was all about shutting in that bishop on c1, which shut out the rook on a1. And yeah, a swift counterattack on the king side. So well played, Adrian. Really well done. Really well played. So I'll post a link in the description and in the comments. I'll post it at the top. I'll pin it at the top where you can find the New in Chess website. The book is published by New in Chess, and you can buy the book directly from New in Chess. They ship to 100 countries. There you are. There are also digital editions, and of course there's the original course on Chessable as well. And you can also see some sample pages on the link that I'll post as well. So if you want to have a little preview of the book and my recommendations. There you go. I hope soon enough I'll have a physical copy to show you. And then, yeah, I'll be hammering on about the book some more as well. Thanks for watching.